You'd have to be moving in, you'd have to rush over to your lawyer and get your keys and rush back so you can meet your mover. It doesn't work so much like that anymore. The keys are usually left in a lockbox. On closing, when everything is confirmed, the deal is closed, transferred, the lawyer will likely release a lockbox code to you and you can get the keys right from the property, which is super convenient. Hey everybody, it's Hussein Kabani, your favorite broker. Today, I want to take some time and talk to my first-time home buyers. So if you're watching this video, likely what has happened is you've Googled first-time home buyer, or you Googled my name, or I've actually sent you this link. Because I have these conversations so often, I'm just gonna do a video about it, and I think that there's a lot of useful information in here, okay? So basically what we're gonna do in this video is I'm gonna actually walk you guys through exactly how I would talk to any first-time home buyer that has approached me to help them find a home. We have about 9 steps or so to go through, and I'm gonna try to explain them to you in detail. So it might be a little bit lengthy, and after watching all of this, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to contact me and we can kind of clarify anything or address any specific questions that you guys have. So let's get right into it. I'm gonna start with the most boring part, but one of the parts that's most important to me is basically our brokerage documents, okay? So anytime we work with a buyer, we're always gonna have something called a buyer representation agreement, okay? And just quickly to break it down, I mean, it's a 3-page agreement, but just to quickly break it down and what that buyer representation agreement means is that it's an exclusive agreement to work with a certain brokerage. It's not even, you won't even find the agent's name there. A contract's always with the brokerage, not that it's foreign to you, but I wanna clarify that. But you would really be committed to working with that agent for a set period of time. Most of our buyer representation contracts are 3 to 4 months. Sometimes they could be as much as 6 months or maybe even a year, depending on what that buyer's timeline looks like. As you guys probably already know, that as a realtor, I would not get compensated unless there's a deal that's happened and actually closed. We could write the deals we want to write, but if they don't close, there's still no compensation for the realtor at that point. Okay, so it's not just to kind of tie up a person, but if I'm going to be investing my time and energy and having expenses on showing people properties and spending my time with them, I do expect to be compensated at the end of it. So this is something that I'll be very honest with you guys. When I was first starting off, I didn't really do this too much. I've been burned so many times that I really won't move forward with anybody unless they sign a buyer representation agreement with me. Because at the end of the day, I value my time and I'm serious about my business. So I always kind of think about agents that don't get buyer representation agreements signed, like how serious are they about their business? Not to call anyone out, but that's just my thought process that goes into it. At the same time, I'm looking for a commitment from a client as well and saying, hey, yes, I'm gonna work with you. Please share your knowledge with me, spend your time with me, and help me through this process. And it is a two-way relationship that we have when we sign a buyer representation agreement, okay? So basically we have a buyer representation agreement, and there is another document that I get people to sign as well. It's called a working with realtor. And basically that just explains the type of relationship that you can have with the realtor. Most basic way of explaining it, one, you could do a representation, which is part of the buyer representation. It just explains what a representation is. A representation basically means is that I have a fiduciary duty to represent your best interest in this transaction. Doesn't matter what anyone else thinks or what I think. I have to actually advise you what's best for you to do at that time. Whether you take the advice or not, that's up to you, but I always have to act in your best interest and give you that advice. There is another way that you could do it. It's non-exclusive. It's not something that I would entertain, but it is a customer service agreement, okay? Sometimes I employ customer service agreements when somebody calls me on one of my listings and they're like, I don't have an agent, but I'm going to be spending time to go show them the property. And I basically just get them to sign a customer service agreement for that house in particular. And if they end up buying it, they're going to have to end up buying it through me just because I'm spending my time and educating them about that property alone. But like I said, if you're just generally looking for a house, this is not an agreement I would work on. We would always do a buyer representation agreement because there's a lot of process that goes along with it, which you're going to find out about this in this video. So I got that boring stuff out of the way. It's like eat that frog in the morning. That's it. It's done. Now we can move on with more of the fun stuff. So anytime that you're going to start looking for a property, step number 1 has to be that you have to have a pre-approval. We can't just start going out and looking at properties and not know what we can actually afford to buy and close on, okay? So the number 1 thing is going to be going through getting a mortgage approval. Whether you want to go to a bank that you deal with or a mortgage broker, it's up to you. I always highly recommend that you work with a mortgage broker, specifically mortgage brokers that I have worked with, because I have a lot of experience working with these people and I know what they're capable of doing. And I know that whatever they're going to tell you, they're going to be able to deliver on it. They're not going to sugarcoat anything to help you move forward and then get you stalled out at the end of it. The people that we work with and recommend, I have solid confidence that they're going to be able to close a transaction. If they tell you that you can get a $700,000 mortgage, I have every possible faith in them that they will be able to get you and do what they say they're going to do. So number one is going to be getting your pre-approval in place. The next thing is that you really have to understand the type of properties that are out there, okay? So there's really three type of properties that are out there. The first one is the one that I think most people would want to get, which is a freehold property. So a freehold property means is that you own the land and you own the structure, and there's usually no monthly maintenance fees that come with it, like you're paying into a corporation or anything else like that. Freehold properties come in various different types. So you can obviously have a detached property, you can have a semi-detached, you can have a townhouse. These are the type of freehold properties that are out there, okay? Freehold properties do cost more money typically than a condo property, okay? Because you're owning the land and you're owning the structure, so they do come at a higher cost. Not every first-time home buyer can go directly there. Usually with our first-time home buyers, they end up buying into a condo, whether it's a apartment or a townhouse, and they move their way up to a freehold property. Some of them do buy freehold properties, just depends on what your pre-approval comes in at. That's why that pre-approval is important. The second type of property that's common is basically a condo property. So condo properties, again, come in different forms, or types, I should say. So you can get a condo apartment, you can get a condo townhouse. There are condo semi-detaches and condo detached properties. Not very common for semi and detached properties to be condo, but they do exist out there, okay? Most popular ones are going to be the condo apartment, so a condominium, or a condo townhouse. Now, even with these properties, you got to be kind of careful because they have a monthly fee as well. And that monthly fee can include different type of things. Like some of the buildings that you buy into will include all utilities. Some of them will only include water. And if you go to newer buildings, they don't actually include anything. So you have to really look at the listing and have your realtor explain what's included in that fee so you know what else to budget for outside of that. The other thing to be careful about, I would say, is with the condo townhouse type of properties. Some condo townhouse properties are, really just include water and lawn maintenance and garbage pickup and that type of thing. Some of them actually include that when they're going to replace roofs, windows, doors, driveways, these type of things. So maybe you'll find those condo fees to be higher, but you really don't have to worry about anything when it comes down to it, okay? Because everything is going to be covered within that maintenance fee. We're going to get into a little bit more on that maintenance fee when we talk about conditions, because there's going to be a status certificate condition in there as well. So we'll touch on more of that in a minute. The other type of property that are starting to become more popular right now, they're basically called parcel of tied land. They're always referred to as pottles. Basically what that means is that the land that the house sits on, you own that. The structure you own that as well. But the roadway that you drive in on, that's corporate. That's a corporate, and that's part of a condo corporation. So you might ask, why would somebody do that? The reason is this. So as our lands are getting tied up, developers obviously want to build more units, and the cities and towns want more units condensed a little bit tighter. Now, when we typically see these pottles with like townhouses and detached properties, and they're trying to get more units in a specific piece of land. But what ends up happening is that every municipality, city, town, they actually require you to have a certain amount of road width, a certain amount of boulevard space. So your roadway, your sidewalks, so they can even have their city equipment come through there for snow removal, garbage pickup, and things like that. So they actually require you to have that much space. But with the space getting tighter and developers also want to put more units into a tighter piece of land, what they end up doing is that they go this pottle route, okay? So that roadway that you drive in on is going to be part of a monthly fee that you're going to have to pay. And the monthly fees typically are lower because there's not that many expenses associated with it, but they can also range. So in a pottle, again, you would own the land that you have and the structure itself, but the roadways that you drive in on are going to be part of a condo corporation where you're going to be paying monthly into to have it serviced, okay? A lot of times with the potholes, you're going to be paying for your garbage pickup, snow removal, roadway. That's pretty typical. Also, some of them include water and some of them don't include water. So that's another thing that you have to be looking out for. And most of the time, they don't include any other utilities. Water is the only one I've really seen in some cases that it's included. So now that we've kind of covered this much over here right now, we're probably already have found a property that you guys like, and we're going to be ready to move forward and make an offer on this property. So now let's take a look at what actually goes into structuring an offer for a property. So there are a couple of things that are very important, okay? Price is going to be an important thing. Deposit is going to be an important thing. Closing date and your conditions. So price is obviously price. Whenever we go look at a property and you're interested in it, likely we don't have all of the information pulled for every single property we're going to see. Especially in this market here right now where we have a bunch of inventory that's available. We're going to go out and take a look at 4, 5, 6 different houses, and chances are you may not like any of them or you might like one of them. So I'm not going to be able to pull all of the information. We'll have a general idea of what's going on because we work the areas. But when you say, hey, Saint, I like this property, we're going to actually sit down and go through the detailed comparable sales for that property and what the similar properties in that area are selling for. That's how we're going to determine price. So we're going to look at specifically that type of property in that neighborhood and the most recent sales. We're going to compare bedrooms, square footages, washrooms, finished basement or not, yard size, all of these things. And this is the information I'm going to be able to share with you just so I can kind of help you, guide you to figure out what the market value is for the house that you actually like. So we'll look at these factors. I may make a suggestion and say, hey, I think we should offer in at this, but ultimately it's going to be up to you of what you want to do, but you're going to have the right information to make that decision. So that's how we kind of come up with the price for the offer. Deposit is typically going to be 5%, okay, of your purchase price. So, if you're buying for $600,000, you're going to have a $30,000 deposit available almost immediately, okay? The next business day is when you're going to want this deposit, when you're going to have this deposit. Closing date, it's going to vary as well, okay? So if you're going to go look at a vacant property or possibly in this market where that seller has already bought a property and they need to sell this property quickly, it might benefit you if you can do it to have a shorter closing. Typical closings are about 60 days, okay? But if it's a vacant property or that seller really needs to close that property, you might be able to get a better deal if you can close in 30 days. Typical, like I said, is 60, could even be 90 days. That's something that we can negotiate kind of back and forth with the seller and figure out what works for the buyer at the same time. The other really important thing is going to be conditions. Now, we're coming out of a market where if you put in a condition on an offer, I'd tell you it's not happening, right? But now we're seeing basically every offer come in with conditions. The conditions will be a little bit different depending on the type of property that you're purchasing as well. So if you're purchasing a freehold property, the common 2 conditions that you're going to be putting in there, and it's the same with condos as well, I should say. So across the board, any property that you're going to buy, there's 2 standard conditions that I would always have in there. One is for a mortgage approval, and the second thing is it's going to be for a home inspection. You might be asking me now that, hey, like we already have a pre-approval, why would I want to put a mortgage approval in? And I'm just going to touch on it very quickly. Basically, the thing is when you get your pre-approval done, that's you. They're qualifying you, your income, your credit, your financial background, and what your liabilities and assets are. There is a second component of getting a mortgage, which is the house itself, the property that you're buying. The bank has to feel comfortable lending the money against that property, okay? So it's important to have this in there because the bank is going to do their own due diligence. They're going to relook at probably what your information says versus what that property information is, and then finally give you an approval. It's a very safe way about going about these things. So that's going to be for your mortgage. The second one is going to be a home inspection. Some people want to omit having or forego having an inspection done on a condo unit. I can see that happening because there's not a whole lot, but it's always safer for you if you want to invest that money to go through, make sure everything works properly. I would highly, highly, highly recommend it on a freehold property. There's so many things that go on with the freehold property, and you own everything about that property. You own the bricks, you own the roof, you own the windows, you own the plumbing, electrical, HVAC. You own so many things in there. And even for me, being in the industry and going through so many houses on my own and having investment properties, I still have every single one of my houses inspected by a professional home inspector, even new construction properties. I don't care if you want to be out there looking at this house and saying it's 2 years old. I found issues, or my home inspectors found issues with homes that are 3 months old, okay? So we really want to be able to catch this, especially if your house is under that 1 year. You're going to automatically have carry-on warranty on it, even if you're buying it as a resale buyer. There's so many times in certain common examples like insulation in the attic not being adequate that we've always been able to catch. That builder is going to come back and blow it up with insulation. It's just easier for him to do it that way than try to dispute it with you. So there's a lot of things, a lot of benefits that you can get from a home inspection. I'll tell you guys this as well. I'm not getting a home inspection to try to find faults in the property or see what's wrong with the property. There's a huge benefit to doing a home inspection, whereas if you get a good home inspector, they're actually going to be able to tell you how to take care of the property, when you're supposed to be turning on and off your outside taps, when you should be doing caulking, what to look out for, how to maintain the house so you don't run into a big problem, how often to check your roof, all of these type of things. A good home inspector is going to be able to tell you. So these are 2 standard clauses I would add into any agreement that we're going to put in. There's a third one that I add in, and I really don't see it being used. Sometimes even when I submit the offer, agents are asking me why I actually need to have this. I try to justify it the best as I can, but if it really comes to shove, I tell my clients it's up to you, but I don't see it being a hugely important thing, but I would like to have it in there, which is a lawyer review of the overall agreement, okay? So all of these conditions that I've talked to you about, they're usually a 5 business day condition, okay? Sometimes we can cut them down a little bit to make our offer look a little bit more favorable if you're comfortable with it. We still have received offers sometimes without a home inspection or just financing. So there's a different way of kind of going about this. But these are the 3 conditions that I would like to put in any offer that I write. The fourth one is for condo properties and also these podal type of properties. They're always going to have a status certificate. So you want to do a status certificate review. Not necessarily you, but that status certificate document is going to go to your lawyer, okay? Typically they would have 2 or 3 days to review it. That status certificate document is going to have a bunch of information. One of the things it's going to tell you is what the monthly maintenance fee is and what it actually includes and how that monthly is going to be divided, okay? So part of it is going to go to your operating expenses, like basically every month, every year. And there's going to be a chunk of that that's going to go to something called a reserve fund. That's going to be for future capital expenditures. Maybe you're buying into a condo building where the elevators are going to need to be replaced, or there's an HVAC system on the roof that's going to need to be done, or roof itself. So they usually have a time frame of when they're going to be doing this, and through that status certificate, you're going to be able to see, based on their projections, if they have adequate enough reserve fund right now and the amount that's being accumulated, if they're going to have enough money to do the capital expenditures that they need to do. We have to be very careful about this, okay? Because if they don't have the capital that's required, there's something that can come up, which is an assessment, a special assessment. Basically, if that building is short, say $100,000, and they have X amount of units and they need to get this repair done, there's a good chance that they're going to take that $100,000 and divide it by the number of units and say your share is this. Sometimes they do it by square footage, or sometimes it's by the unit. It could vary, okay? But this is a very important document for you guys to have checked out. Also because it looks at if there's any legal liabilities against this corporation. Is a corporation suing anybody, or is the corporation being sued by somebody? I've seen this in status certificates. I don't want to say all the time, but I've seen it. I've seen where the condo corporation is actually suing the builder for things that weren't done correctly, like underground parking, and there's various different things I've seen. And sometimes the condo corp is being sued, and most commonly I've seen it for slip and falls. Some of the claims, just as a side note, I've seen a super exaggerated, like $7 million, which we know is never going to happen. And a good lawyer is going to be able to tell you that, okay, where you should actually be concerned about risk. But very important document to get reviewed. All right, just to quickly recap, 3 conditions I always want to put in: mortgage approval, home inspection, and I want a lawyer review of the agreement as long as I can keep it in there. If you're buying either a condo property or a podal, we want to do a status certificate review on it as well. So that's basically the conditions. I want to highlight again, the deposit is due the next business day. So if we do a deal on Wednesday, Thursday, the deposit has to be into the brokerage, okay? If we do a deal on Saturday, you have until Monday. Unless Monday happens to be a stat holiday in Ontario, then you have until Tuesday. But what I'm trying to tell you is that you have to have your 5% on hand ready to pay as a deposit. Now that we have our offer accepted, we've dropped off our deposit, we're gonna start working through the conditions, okay, of the offer. Now, if we have a home inspection condition, I could recommend a couple of home inspectors. You're welcome to look on your own, ask your family members, but we're gonna get a home inspection booked. We are gonna have a mortgage condition, so you wanna forward this off to whoever you got your pre-approval from and make sure that they're comfortable with this as well. Usually we can forward these documents off to whoever you want. You just gotta let us know that you're comfortable with doing it. When we have a lawyer review, you're going to tell us your lawyer's name. We can forward them the document as well so we can get this process moving. And we're going to be keeping a timeline on and making sure that we're going to be able to hit all of these things. If we have a status certificate might work a little bit differently. In a hot market, sellers usually had a status certificate ready, prepared for you to take and look at. In this market, maybe they don't have it because we want to have a status certificate that's within the last 30 days, okay? We don't want too much of an old status certificate because things could change. So you want to have it at least within the last 30 days. Likely in this market, we're going to have to order one. Usually it takes about 10 days, not business days, but 10 days to get the status certificate. And in our conditions, you either have 2 or 3 days to review it. So as soon as we get that status certificate, we're going to forward it to Offer Lawyer to review it. Chances are that if you had the other conditions and they didn't have a status certificate available on hand, we'll probably be through our home inspection, lawyer review, and our financing, and we'll probably be working on the status certificate at the very end. But it's our job to make sure that we're doing this all in a timely manner. Hopefully, everything is going to go really well, and we're going to be okay with the conditions and be able to fulfill them. Once we're at that point, we're going to do something called a notice of fulfillment, okay? Basically, that means that we're getting rid of those conditions from the agreement because we've fulfilled it, okay? So once we send all the notice of fulfillments in, you're in a firm and binding agreement at that point, okay? So there's no more backing out. But say, for example, we found that you can't get financing for whatever reason, or you're not happy with the home inspection, or something is wrong with the status certificate. It doesn't happen often, but what we can do if you're not satisfied with something at all, or you're not getting that mortgage for some reason, something went wrong, we can do a mutual release. But we have to do it on that timely manner, okay? That's why we're going to be very careful about how much time we have on conditions. So if we do come up to that point, we could do a mutual release. Any of the money that you had in your deposit, you will get that money back. It might take about a week or so to process, but you will get your money back as long as everything is done in a timely manner and we process that mutual release, okay? So you'll get your money back. Once we do sign a notice of fulfillment and we've kind of gone through all of our conditions, that then becomes a firm and binding agreement. There's no more getting your deposit back. There's no more mutual release unless they agree, which I don't see why they would, but you're basically committed to that purchase at that point. What happens next? Usually we write in 2 or 3 revisits to the property. I tell all of my clients that, hey, we could go revisit that property 1 or 2 times, depending on how many conditions we have. Whenever you really want, just give me some kind of a heads up. The last visit I want to do when hopefully the property is empty. It's not always the case, but I want to do it basically a day or so before the closing, so we could finally take a look at all of the condition of the property, make sure all the appliances, everything is working, and we're happy about what we're getting before the final closing the next day. When it comes to the closing the next day, we're basically going to transfer over the money to the seller, and it's very hard to have any recourse after that point, okay? So once a transaction closes and you find out that your dishwasher doesn't work, it might be a $600 or $700 dishwasher. Your lawyer could write a letter to them. If the sellers want to cooperate, we could do something. If they don't want to cooperate, what's really your recourse in all this? I'm going to be very transparent with you. It's basically nothing. It's going to be really hard for me to believe that someone's going to go after and try to sue somebody for a $700 dishwasher. It might not be worth it, okay? So we really want to do this last revisit, make sure everything works and we're comfortable with it, because we could bring up those issues. And it's not always a guarantee that those issues can also be resolved, but we could bring up those issues at the same time, okay? And try to get some resolution to it before we do the final closing. Aside from that, we come up to closing. Closing is a little bit more different now after COVID, or kind of at the end of COVID. Before, you would have had to go to your lawyer to sign up all your paperwork 2-3 days before closing, and you would have had to give them a bank draft for the balance of the purchase price, balance of the deposit, closing costs, all these type of things. And then finally, when all of that is done, on the closing day, you'd have to be moving in, you'd have to rush over to your lawyer and get your keys and rush back so you can meet your mover. It doesn't work so much like that anymore. The keys are usually left in a lockbox. On closing, when everything is confirmed, the deal is closed, transferred, the lawyer will likely release a lockbox code to you and you can get the keys right from the property, which is super convenient right now for our clients. So guys, I know we kind of went through this information quickly, but this is exactly the conversation I would have with my first-time home buyers, and we can get into any kind of questions or anything else you guys have after this. So I hope this video was informational to you. I know there may be questions that you have, so feel free to reach out to me. I would be more than happy to take some time and explain the details to you. And if you're searching for a new home and you're a first-time home buyer, after watching this video, I know I'm the right choice for you guys to be working with. Until next time, guys, remember one thing: get Cabani, get sold.
Sell it, sell it, sell it, sell it, sell it, sold. Sell it, sell it, sell it, sell it, sell it, sold. Sell it, sell it, sell it, sell it, sell it, sold. Sell it, sell it, sell it, sell it, sold.